Today we're talking about the $1 trillion coin. Check this out. We have Kaiba's Blue Eyes White Dragon, Yugi's Dark Magician, Andrei's PSA 10 Charizard, and Janet Yellen's $1 trillion coin. All objects that are considered legendary. Let's begin. Hi, my name is Andrei Jikh. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the Yugi boy. This is not a government cryptocurrency. Instead, it's an idea. It's an idea that floats around the internet in the US for what feels like every week, every time we need to raise money. And when this idea becomes popular, the internet gets together and argues whether this idea is good or bad. But the funny thing is that it's extremely misunderstood. So let me show you what this idea looks like. This is the $1 trillion coin. Where'd that come from? This is the platinum coin. Well, this is not made of platinum. This is made up of broken childhood dreams of being a magician. Now, you might be wondering, is this gonna be a real physical coin or is it gonna be digital? Because if it's physical, where would we find all the platinum in the world to create a coin that's worth $1 trillion if platinum's like $1,000 an ounce, roughly? We need to find 1 billion ounces, which translates to 62,500 pounds, which would be a very chunky coin. And the answer is, it would be both, a hybrid of physical and digital. We would take a little bit of platinum, mix it in with a bunch of other metals, and bam, stamp it with $1 trillion. Exactly like we do with the $100 bill. Think about it. Does the $100 bill have $100 worth of cotton inside of it? No, it doesn't. So it's the same idea here. So in today's video, I want to talk about what this idea represents, what it's trying to solve, and why everyone's talking about it, because it could be a possible reality that we could mint $1 trillion coin, which would be insane. The history of it is fascinating if you're a nerd. If you're not a nerd, it is not fascinating at all, and PewDiePie's videos are way more interesting, just a heads up. The reason that we're talking about creating this $1 trillion coin is because our government needs to raise money in order to function. But to do that, we need our politicians to come together and agree to something, which we can't do because we're like one giant dysfunctional family. And that's forced someone to figure out a loophole from Section 31 of the US Code 5112, which states that the Secretary may mint and issue platinum bullion coins and proof platinum coins in accordance with, and then it gives specifications of the material, the size, etc. In 1996, Congress passed a law that allowed the US Treasury to create collectible coins, except in that law it didn't actually specify what their values should or could be, only that they be made from a certain material, size, weight, and meet the needs of the US. But the original intention was to allow us to sell these coins in order to create more revenue and create more income. But because of how vague this law actually was, we can take this law and exploit it with this one trick that has nothing to do with the word that I can't pronounce. Signorage. No, it's pronounced signorage. Nope, just kidding. It's pronounced seniorage. And it literally means to make money by making money. So as long as we're minting this $1 trillion coin to make money, which in this case we are, then technically, legally, lawfully, constitutionally, everything should be fine without Congress's approval and without the need of going through the political process. Now, as far as inflation goes, technically our Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, can't just take our $1 trillion coin and just print some tendies by YOLOing all of it into AMC and GME call options. But that would be funny, can you imagine? In the money, call options expired worthless. Hey, got any more of those $1 trillion coins laying around? Technically, that should not happen, because instead, once we minted the $1 trillion coin, we would then take it and then deposit it into the Federal Reserve's bank account, and then with the money in that account, we would use it to pay down on our obligations. And this idea has become so popular, you've probably seen it end up on Twitter's trending with #MintTheCoin, because so many people want to see this become a reality. But on the other side, or flip side of the coin, some people are afraid that this will cause inflation, because won't asset values go through the roof just like they did in the last year and a half because of how much money we've printed? And this is the same thing. And the answer is no, but it depends. This means the Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, by law, has the ability to just magically conjure up $1 trillion coin. And this is interesting because the reason why she might want to do something like that is because of how spending works in the US whenever we create bills. It's so interesting because whenever we pass a bill and it becomes a law, even though we agree on what the bill is, Sometimes we don't agree on how to fund it and where to get the money for it, so the politicians will spend a lot of time arguing over how to fund it. And this is almost exclusively a problem for the US because of the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling is a limit on how much money the US government can borrow through its creation of bonds. Anytime our government's like, ooh, I need some money, all it has to do is just automatically conjure up some bonds, pay people interest for holding those bonds, and with the money it raises, it uses to pay for things like Social Security, Medicare, payroll, tax refunds, all that good stuff. And this limit, by the way, does not reset yearly or monthly like our credit cards do. This is a hard cap limit. And in 1917, when we created the debt ceiling, we set the limit at $1 billion. There was no scientific reason why we chose it. It just sounded cool at the time, and we were like, wow, that's a lot of money. We would never spend that much. How wrong we were, because by 1939, we had to ask Congress once again to restructure the debt ceiling to pay for World War II because of how expensive it was. And throughout history, we've raised the debt ceiling roughly 80 times. And today, that number is closer to $28.5 trillion. And again, throughout history, this was pretty straightforward to increase until the mid-1990s. In 1994, mood lighting for effect, a new group of fiscally conservative politicians would take control over Congress. People like Newt Gingrich, who became the House Speaker. Now, his goal at that time was to tell Congress that they had a spending problem, and they couldn't just keep raising the debt ceiling to solve their problems. And this ended the era of politicians unanimously agreeing to raise the debt ceiling whenever it was needed. Instead, the debt ceiling became this political issue that politicians would use as bargaining chips to gain leverage over the other political party to get them to agree to something they would want, or else bad things would start to happen. Because if we breach the debt ceiling, and if we don't raise it on time, then national parks begin to close. Seniors stop receiving their Social Security income for a time. People that work for the government and the military stop getting paid. Families that depend on the government for support stop getting paid. Essentially, the US would default on its debt obligations. And to this day, throughout history, the US has never defaulted, which is one of the reasons why we're able to borrow as much money as we do at such low interest rates. This is because the US is known, as the Lannisters, to pay their debts in full, not always on time. And when we can't agree to pay on time, we have to shut the government down because we can't afford to run it anymore. And so the debt ceiling was created to make sure that the US government wasn't spending more money than it was making. But throughout history, as I'm sure you know, that's exactly what ended up happening. In 1995, we shut the government down for 3 weeks when Bill Clinton was in office because we disagreed about certain budget cuts. In 2013, we shut down again for 16 days when Barack Obama was in office over implementations of the Affordable Health Care Act. And the longest shutdown in history happened pretty recently in 2018 when Donald Trump was in office over disagreements on how to fund the border. The real reason politicians don't want to raise the debt ceiling is because technically it pays for the previous administration's bills. In this case, it would pay for Donald Trump's tax cuts, which the Democrats don't necessarily want to do. For that reason, the debt ceiling has become this political thing that we pass back and forth, this game of give and take. All right, I'll pay your bill. What are you gonna give me? $1 trillion infrastructure budget. No, it's too little. I don't like it. I don't like you. I don't like your face. My face? Yeah, your face. All right, well, let's sit here and pout while the American people suffer. That's fine by me. That's a dramatic reenactment of our government trying to raise the debt ceiling while everyone else suffers around them. And if we don't fix this problem soon, we are scheduled to run out of money next week. Literally, not next week, but sometime in October. It could be next week, but definitely sometime in October. And for this reason, minting the $1 trillion coin has become so popular again. Technically, we're not creating the $1 trillion coin to pay for new expenses. We're only using it to pay for expenses and commitments we've made in the past. Therefore, it should not increase inflation. Unless, of course, we did use this as a mechanic to pay for new expenses, in which case inflation would eventually catch up. So then the question becomes, well then why don't we just end the debt ceiling? Why do we have one? If it's something that we have to periodically increase anyway, if this is something that everyone benefits from, if this is something that politicians don't want to take the blame and the fall for increasing, why don't we just get rid of it? Other countries in Europe don't have it and they're doing just fine. And the answer to that is I don't know. But here's what I think. The reason that we've probably not ended the debt ceiling so far is because politically it is not a very popular thing to do. Because no one wants to be the party in charge who does what on the surface seems like it is financially irresponsible, because the reactions are gonna be the same. Those spendy Democrats just ended the debt ceiling. They are so financially irresponsible. The Republicans did what? More tax cuts for the rich, never electing those guys again. You get the idea. No matter who does it, it just doesn't look good, so nobody wants to be that guy. But as far as minting the coin itself, personally, I'm 50-50 on it. On one hand, I think it's a good idea because it's a lot better than defaulting on our debt, which we've never done. It's better than leaving people furloughed and jobless. But on the other hand, it's a bad idea because psychologically it would create more damage around the world and in the United States as far as people's perception of the dollar's strength. Because they hear minting or creating $1 trillion and immediately they think inflation. Even though technically it's just an accounting trick, it's the perception and the anticipation of said inflation that could create that kind of an inflation. And because most people, other than the nerds like me and you, will not take the time out of their busy day to watch a boring 10-minute long finance video on YouTube that explains this stuff, most people will misunderstand it and dismiss it. And arguably the other biggest downside to this is that if minting the $1 trillion coin becomes a new norm in politics, if politicians don't want to agree with each other and they don't want to go through the political process, all they have to do is abuse the treasury and be like, well, you created $1 trillion coin, I should be able to create a $5 trillion coin, and then back and forth. And if that's used to pay for new expenses, then absolutely that would create inflation. So maybe minting the $1 trillion coin would set that precedent, and maybe that's not a can of worms we want to open up. That's really the real downside. As always, don't forget to have a great rest of your day. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Go get up to $250 worth of free Bitcoin with this BlockFi link right here. Go get your 2 free stocks with Webull, links down below. Track them automatically. Patreon links down below as well. Love you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you back here on Monday, Friday, sometimes Wednesday. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.